After welcoming Kevin into the Myriads, Stewart had 3 beautiful women brought into the room and then he left. Kevin had a feeling they weren't there of their own free will. And anyway, he was married to Lily, so he told the women they should get out before anyone came back. The leader of the group walked up to Kevin and said, "You're not like the others. Please tell me your name. In the future, the Sideros Alliance will find a way to repay you for this." "You're from the Sideros Alliance?" Kevin's eyes betrayed his surprise when he heard her say that. "Yes, we are," the woman replied as she nodded her head. "My name isn't important, but you should leave quickly," Kevin smiled. Then he shook his head as he walked out of the room. Things were getting weird. First, Kevin had saved Marshall's men from the effects of an herbal ingredient, and now he had freed members of the Sidero Alliance. It must have been fate. After leaving the bar, Kevin called for a ride to the Whistler Hotel. "I hope Mitchell Cook isn't at the hotel today, or this is going to cost me." When he got to the Whistler, Kevin saw someone familiar outside the building. It was Dalton Steele's wife, Miranda, being chased down the street by more than a dozen people. "So, you're trying to run away?" a man said as he suddenly pounced on Miranda and pushed her to the ground. "She sure is hard to catch," another man shouted as he took out a rope to tie her up. "Stop it!" Kevin yelled as he rushed toward her. Without thinking, he shoved the man aside. "Kevin!" Miranda asked in surprise. She was relieved to see him, but still called out, "Go and find Dalton!" Miranda knew that Kevin was good at fighting, but he was seriously outnumbered, and the guys who were chasing her were no slouches. Their boss was Dominic Archer. However, Kevin didn't pay any attention to Miranda's request. He kicked one of the other attackers with all his strength and then pulled her up off the ground, standing in front of her to protect her. "If you know what's good for you, you'll get out of here right now. If you don't, I promise it'll be painful," their leader roared. "I'll tell you what. I'll give you just 1 minute to get out of here." "Have it your way. Brothers, get him," the man yelled as he lunged at Kevin. The other men also reacted fast. They pulled knives out of their belts and quickly ran at Kevin. "Kevin, you have to get out of here now. There are too many of them. If I let these guys get you, how can I ever face Dalton again?" Kevin answered as he stood his ground. He knew how dangerous these people were. If they took Miranda, there's no telling what they would do to her. Kevin had no choice. "Just stay behind me," he said to Miranda as he threw a backhand at the man closest to him. Then he stepped back so that he could keep protecting her. The man yelled as he got up from the ground holding his head. Then he said to the others, "Hit him again." Kevin saw that they had nowhere to run. It looked helpless, but somehow he felt a surge of energy flowing through him, and it wasn't adrenaline. Kevin was stronger than any of these guys, but there were way too many of them coming from every direction. One of them got past Kevin and swung a billy club at Miranda's head. "Watch it!" Kevin shouted as he threw one of the attackers aside and blocked the strike. "Kill him!" the group's leader shouted as he rose from the ground and slashed at Kevin's back with his knife. His clothes instantly turned red from all the blood. By now, they were all surrounding Kevin, armed with crowbars and knives. Kevin was in intense pain from the cut, but he still didn't stop protecting Miranda. "Damn it," the leader growled as he spat at Kevin. "Finish them off." "Kevin, don't worry about me. Save yourself," Miranda said tearfully. Ever since Dalton and Kevin became brothers, Miranda hadn't thought that much of Kevin. Even though he had helped her, it seemed that a lot of times it was just dumb luck. But seeing Kevin risking his life to save her deeply moved Miranda. She wished she could tell her husband that he'd chosen his friend wisely. A few of Stewart's men had gone outside to see if Kevin had arrived yet, and they saw the fight. One of them yelled, "What the hell's going on? They're attacking our enforcer." One of them shouted into the hotel, "Brothers, come out quickly. Our enforcer's in a fight outside." In seconds, dozens of members of the Myriads rushed out of the hotel and surrounded Dominic Archer's group with murder in their eyes. "Who the hell are you?" the leading man asked in a panic. "Your worst nightmare," one of the Myriads said as he grabbed him by the throat and threw him to the ground. As more and more of them rushed out of the hotel to help Kevin, Dominic's men had no choice but to surrender. When he saw Kevin covered in blood, Stewart shouted, "Toss them into the Chicago River!" Then he picked up Kevin, who was barely conscious, and asked him, "Are you all right, brother?" "Kevin, can you hear me? Please hang on." Miranda sobbed as she put her hand on Kevin's blood-stained cheek. This whole mess had been caused by a turf war between Dominic Archer and Dalton Steele. A couple of weeks ago, Dalton opened a new bar on the north side of the city. It was wildly popular and started to affect Dominic's businesses. So Dominic sent some of his men to vandalize Dalton's bar, but it didn't work. Dalton and his men ended up beating them up, sending some of them to the hospital. Dominic took this personally and asked Dalton to meet him to discuss the issue. But when he demanded half of the bar's profits, the meeting went sideways. So Dominic decided to get even by going after Miranda. "I'll be fine, but you should get out of here and go find Dalton, and don't go out alone from now on." Kevin didn't know why Dominic had tried to take Miranda, but he figured it would be safer for her to stay near her husband. "What will you do if I leave?" Seeing how much Kevin had risked for her, she was deeply indebted to him. "You don't have to worry about me," Kevin said as he struggled to point to the people around him. "These guys will take care of me." Miranda had a lot of common sense. She knew they had to act quickly, so she patted Kevin on the shoulder and left to find Dalton. "Hang on, Kevin. We'll get you to the hospital," Stewart reassured him as he ordered his aides to get a car and rush him to the nearest emergency room. The hospital staff couldn't believe how many people came in to drop Kevin off. As soon as they were sure that he would get good treatment, most of Stewart's group left. "Kevin, you hang in there. I've got something to take care of, so I got to get going." Then he hesitated for a moment before continuing. "I have to leave town tomorrow. You'll be leading the development of the Chicago branch while I'm gone. You're on your way up." "I understand, Brett, but it looks like I won't be able to see you off tomorrow." Then Stewart stood up and turned to the aides who were in the room. There must have been 6 of them. He said seriously, "It's up to you to protect our enforcer. I'm counting on you." "Yes, sir." "Rest up, my friend." Kevin looked at the men who were standing guard over him. "What are your names?" Kevin asked the 2 who were standing by the window. "I'm Spencer, but you can call me Spence," the first one answered. "And I'm Derek. From now on, the 2 of you will be my deputies in the Chicago branch. When I'm not around, you'll be in charge." "Thank you. We won't let you down." "We're just getting things off the ground, and I'll be here for a while, so I'm counting on you to take care of things." The 2 of them understood what he was asking and got very excited. "Anything you say, sir," Derek promised. "Go ahead. There's lots to do, and take the other guys with you," Kevin said as he gestured for them to leave the room. Once he was alone, Kevin called Miss Wilson and asked her to come to the hospital if she had the time. "It looks like things are going to get pretty hairy in Chicago," Kevin thought to himself. "I have to make sure everything's in place so that the company can survive." A while later, Miss Wilson quickly walked into the room and saw all the bandages on Kevin's body. Her eyes grew wide as she asked him, "Sir, what happened?" "I'll be fine. Just tell me what you found out." He didn't want her or anyone else to know that he was involved with the Myriads now. "There's clear evidence that Victoria and Jason Jones conspired to steal Lily's shares and have her banished from the family. In order to pay her bill, she got a job as a broadcaster with our company." "Is the import-export company also in the hands of the Jones family?" Kevin asked as he remembered what Tyler had told him. "Yes, sir, they took that too. But Mr. Dawn personally took over the company and ran it into the ground, causing the Jones family to lose close to $400 million. Miss Wilson replied with a faint smile. Even though she didn't know what the relationship was between Kevin and Lily, as an outside observer, she felt that the Jones family had gone too far this time. "Please log in and arrange to have $100,000 transferred each day to Lily's payroll account. Make sure it's from my personal account, not the company's." He still wanted to make sure that Lily was taken care of, even though they were separated right now. "One more thing. Did you ever find out why those advertising companies pulled their contracts?" "Sorry, sir, we still haven't made any progress on that. By the way, are my parents doing any better?" Alan and Susan should have been discharged from the hospital by now. He didn't want them to go back to their home in the country because he was too worried about what the Williams family might try to do to them. After I heard from Dr. Willow, I bought an apartment in the Salix Leaf Complex, in your name, of course, Miss Wilson recounted to Kevin. Kevin nodded his head to show that he approved. Thanks. I'll be asking you for your help with some company matters. And if you need a decision on anything, please give me a call anytime. You can rest assured that I'll take care of the company's affairs while you recover. If there's nothing else, I'll head back to the office, Miss Wilson replied as she walked to the door. While he was lying in the hospital bed, Kevin started to think about how he could make some money from selling New Age herbal medicine, especially after seeing that bidding frenzy at the auction. His phone vibrated, snapping him out of his daydream. He looked at the caller ID and answered, Hi, Marshall. It's been a while. What have you been up to lately? Sorry, Kevin. I've been getting a surprise ready for you. What surprise? I saw how well you could refine herbal medication, so I got some of my men together to find you tons of herbs and stuff. I'm wondering where you want me to send them. What kind of herbs? Not just herbs, but flowers, spices, things from all over the world, Marshall said as he listed a lot of exotic ingredients. Great. Send them to my place in Corwin Tower and then have someone pick me up at Downtown General. Sure thing. I'll be right there, Marshall said as he hung up the phone. Kevin was so excited that he almost jumped out of bed. He remembered a recipe that could help him not only recover from his injuries but increase his power. And 2 crucial ingredients were in the list that Marshall had read off to him. That could get him in shape to compete with all the people who were trying to take over Chicago. I've never really felt that strength was so important, until now, Kevin thought to himself. And his books contained even more information and lost recipes that he hadn't even read yet. About half an hour later, Marshall stopped by to pick up Kevin from the hospital. When they stepped off the elevator into the penthouse, Kevin saw a dozen large black bags piled up in the living room. Even from 30 feet away, he could smell their medicinal fragrance. We got you only the best. Let's get everything moved in. He couldn't wait to get started. After Marshall picked Kevin up from the hospital, he drove him to his apartment at Corwin Tower. On the way there, Marshall ordered his men to deliver all the herbal ingredients they'd obtained as a surprise for Kevin. When they got off the elevator and stepped into the living room, Kevin was amazed at what he saw. A few minutes later, he saw that half of the herbs had already been piled up in the living room. He was overjoyed. Thank you for all your hard work. Later on, bring your guys over to the Whistler Hotel for dinner. My treat. Thank you, Kevin. Kevin didn't say anything. He was focused on all the medicinal herbs filling his living room. Marshall understood Kevin's preoccupation, and he very tactfully said goodbye and headed for the elevator. Ignoring his injuries, Kevin let out a whoop and rushed over to look through the bags. He picked out all the ingredients for the first pill that he planned to make. At the same time that Kevin was turning his apartment into a New Age medical lab, Lily was broadcasting a live show. Ever since she started doing live broadcasts, she'd taken on a beautiful glow. She also attracted tons of fans who sent her donations or bought memberships. As soon as Lily started her show, a fan with the username Immortal Sword Inheritor sent her a series of donations for her account. Thank you, Immortal Sword Inheritor, Lily immediately replied to express her gratitude. But then the Legend of the Sword posted a comment. Goddess, why don't you do a dance? I'm sorry, I never learned to dance, Lily replied shyly. She'd never even been to a nightclub, let alone gone dancing. This immediately ticked off Immortal Sword Inheritor, who replied, Is this your first live stream? Don't you know I've donated more than anyone else? You need to do what I say. As soon as this comment was posted, Lily's feed was flooded with requests for her to dance. She knew that if she disappointed her fans, they might stop sending her donations, which she really needed now that her income had dropped so much. Lily began to stand up from her chair, but just as she was about to dance, someone using the handle Mighty Moose donated $50,000. When this happened, everyone started commenting, telling her she had an admirer and she had to do whatever Mighty Moose wanted. Lily was speechless for a second and got very excited at all the activity in her comments. She'd been live streaming for a while now, and nobody had ever donated more than a couple $1,000s. Then Mighty Moose posted a comment saying, "Now that I'm the high tipper, I have a request. Just talk for a while. Don't bother doing anything else." This immediately shut down Immortal Sword Inheritor and everyone else. Nobody could afford to compete with Mighty Moose. "Thank you, Mighty." But before Lily could finish speaking, she saw that her fan had already left. Meanwhile, Kevin was at his apartment in Corwin Tower putting ingredients into a medicinal cauldron that he'd had delivered. As long as he was going to dive into this, he wanted to do it right instead of just improvising with casseroles and pressure cookers from his kitchen. Based on the instructions in his books, he set the flame and started to refine his pill. But after about a half an hour, the cauldron began to bubble. At the same time, a rich medicinal fragrance wafted out of it. Suddenly, there was a flash of lightning from the storm outside. Since Kevin was at the highest point of one of the tallest buildings in Chicago, he could see the city's skyline light up. Then the lights flickered for a moment as the power grid compensated for the lightning strike. Kevin looked towards the living room and saw a figure standing there. He wondered if the elevator had malfunctioned from the power surge because this was supposed to be a private entrance. But the man who was wearing a black suit, high collar, and bow tie spoke to him like he knew him. "Ignorant youth, how can you risk refining such a powerful pill in a place like this? You have no idea what you're doing. How did you get in here?" But the man ignored him and walked straight toward the bubbling cauldron that Kevin had set up in his kitchen. Kevin wasn't sure what to do about this intruder, but he followed him anyway. Just then, another bolt of lightning flashed outside the window, followed almost immediately by a thunderclap. The steam above the bronze cauldron seemed to glow in the dim light. "Pill refinement should be taken very seriously," the man said in a gravelly voice. "Especially with what some call the heaven and earth pill." The old man stood there and continued to lecture Kevin. "You're fortunate to be so close to the lightning. That will help the process." "Who are you?" His eyes were fixed on the old man. Only now did he realize that the man had put on a dark apron over his suit. He also felt a very powerful and confident presence from him, more than anyone he could remember meeting, even the most skilled martial artists. But the man didn't answer Kevin's question. Instead, he ignored it and asked one of his own. "It's been many years since I've seen an apothecary with as much potential as you. Young man, where did you find the formula for this medicinal pill?" "Are you an apothecary too?" Kevin asked him in astonishment. He hadn't thought of using the term to describe himself, but it made sense considering how he was so interested in preparing the medicines, not just taking them. But he was also very wary. This could just be someone who wanted to steal his pill, which could be worth a fortune at auction. Suddenly, there was another bolt of lightning. It made the whole apartment shake, and when Kevin looked at the cauldron, the green glow became brighter and brighter. After the steam dissipated and the glow faded, Kevin looked into the cauldron and saw a green pill. The man took it in his hand and asked him, "Young man, who is your mentor?" "I don't have a mentor," Kevin replied, slightly irritated. "Please return the pill to me." Upon hearing this, the old man smiled. "Young man, do you realize that if it wasn't for me, this building would have been destroyed? Is that how you show your thanks?" "Well, it's not like I asked you to help me. Besides, I never invited you in. I should have you charged with trespassing," Kevin answered. "You've got a sharp tongue. It's been a long time since anyone talked to me like that." He didn't seem angry at all. Instead, he looked like he might break out in laughter. "That's not all I have to say," Kevin said as he put his hands on his hips. The old man suddenly stepped right in front of Kevin and looked him deeply in his eyes. "I see that you have some talent. Why don't you take me as your mentor?" "Are you kidding?" Kevin said with disdain. "First, you steal my pill, and now you want to be my mentor. Why would I do that?" "You—" The old man was about to say something when he suddenly frowned. "They're here already? Do as I say and you might survive. Then you can decide if you want me as your mentor. the old man said as he put his hand on Kevin's shoulder. Kevin felt faint and sat down on the sofa. Maybe he hadn't recovered from his blood loss yet. Moments later, he saw 7 or 8 figures appear on the veranda. They were all dressed differently, like they were wearing Halloween costumes. "What's that fragrance? A pill?" a middle-aged man in a long brown cloak asked as he sniffed the air. "I didn't know there were any apothecaries in Chicago," said a woman who was dressed in a white kimono. "It looks like he's gone," a muscular man with a greedy look in his eyes said to his companions. "That must be some pill." Another man who looked like he was dressed for a Renaissance fair said dejectedly, "I thought I'd be able to meet a master apothecary, but it looks like I came here for nothing." They all left in disappointment. Then 2 more figures suddenly appeared on the veranda. Kevin frowned and asked, "Who are they?" "Don't make a sound," the old man replied as he immediately covered Kevin's mouth. Kevin watched as the 2 figures looked around the balcony. They seemed to disappear and reappear as the lightning flashed. The storm finally moved off over the lake and they disappeared again. Kevin felt a little better and wondered if he'd just been dreaming. Who were those people? Were they really here? He asked. The old man replied haughtily, "Some people regard them as powerful leaders, but to me they're just a bunch of clowns." Kevin finally snapped out of it and asked, "Now will you give me back my pill?" "Is that all you can think of? If it wasn't for me, those people would have found you just like I did. Do you think that the delivery of such an enormous quantity of herbal ingredients would go unnoticed? Do you still want your pill?" the old man lamented. "Just return it to me or I'll call the police." The old man casually tossed the pill to Kevin. "I've returned your pill to you, but isn't there something you should return to me?" "What would that be?" Kevin had just asked this question when he saw the old man staring at his ring. He immediately realized who he was. "You're the Night King, from the Alliance?" "I'm glad you know who I am. So tell me, do you think I'm qualified to be your mentor now?" Kevin frowned. He didn't know what kind of person the Night King was, but he knew the man was powerful, and he knew how fearful Marshall was of him. After thinking for a moment, Kevin took off his ring and said, "You can have it. It's just a ring." The old man was stunned. He didn't know how to react. He'd expected Kevin to be afraid of him and start begging him for mercy. Who would have thought that he would simply return the ring? "You really don't know who you're dealing with, do you?" the Night King said angrily as he glared at Kevin. Kevin smiled when he saw him act like this. Then he very politely asked, "Will you please be my mentor?" Kevin wasn't a fool. He knew how important it was to have guidance, especially someone as strong as the Night King. Now he could make some progress. "That's more like it. I wish you'd said something earlier. You've got to do something about your attitude." Then he pulled a dagger out from his jacket and said, "But I don't have time to argue. Consider this a gift from mentor to pupil." "Is that the Night Dagger?" Kevin asked in shock. "You know about it," the Night King said with a hint of surprise in his voice. "I read about it in a novel." He wasn't ready to tell him that he'd read about it in the book that he'd taken from Marshall's office. It was said that the dagger didn't need to be wiped after it was stained with blood. It had been forged in a way that kept any liquids from sticking to its surface. As the Night King handed the knife to Kevin, he told him, "This dagger has been with me for many years. Guard it with your life." Kevin nodded as he looked wide-eyed at it. The handle fit his palm comfortably. There was a small pommel to keep it from slipping out of his grip. He noticed that it felt very cold against his skin. "Since I've passed it to you, it's like the dagger recognizes you as its master. Take care of it." Then the Night King said solemnly, "As your training progresses, I hope that you can strive to take my place one day." "Thank you," Kevin said very respectfully. "Now take the pill that you just made. I'll stay with you in case there are any unwelcome side effects," the old man said as he walked back to the living room. For the next 2 weeks, the Night King stayed in Kevin's apartment, teaching him arcane skills and passing on his knowledge. Kevin made rapid progress. Finally, one day as they were sitting in the living room, the Night King got up from the sofa saying, "That's all we can do for now. The rest will come to you as you practice. There are some matters that I've neglected for a while. How can I contact you? He hadn't known him for a long time, but Kevin felt a connection and mutual concern. There's no need to contact me. I'll come find you as I did this time. For now, just keep practicing, the Night King replied as he patted Kevin on the shoulder and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed and Kevin was alone again, his phone suddenly rang. Miss Wilson, what's the matter? Sir, there's going to be a banquet in Chicago tonight. Williams Media is expected to be represented along with the city's other business leaders. Do you have time to go there? She asked cheerfully. It doesn't sound like I need to be there. You always do a fine job representing the company. He really just wanted to stay in his apartment and work on everything the Night King had taught him. It wouldn't be right for you to skip this event. A lot of people still don't know who you are. If you showed up for the banquet, it would cause a lot of excitement, and we could use the opportunity to publicize Brittany and our new client, Charity Boyer. Miss Wilson advised him gently. Kevin realized his new vocation would have to wait a little bit. Maybe it would be good to take a small break. After the Night King left Kevin's apartment, he got a call from Miss Wilson to tell him about a banquet he needed to attend as a representative of Williams Media. She insisted that it would help the company's image if he showed up for it. But Kevin really wanted to practice the techniques that the Night King had spent the past 2 weeks teaching him. You're not giving me much of a choice, Kevin told her. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Please don't misunderstand me, Mr. Williams. I didn't mean to pressure you, she replied anxiously. Just stop by at Corwin Tower to pick me up later, Kevin said as he hung up the phone. At the same moment, Lily had just finished her live broadcast and was walking out of her home studio with a broad smile. It had been 2 weeks since Mighty Moose had tipped her tens of thousands of dollars during her show. This had attracted a lot more viewers and the popularity of her live broadcast skyrocketed. You must be tired, Lily. Do you want some fruit? Dorothy asked as she smiled and walked her daughter to the sofa to sit down. Lily had been the only wage earner in the house lately, and it made Dorothy happy to see her daughter doing so well. I'd like to discuss something with you, Dorothy said. Now that you're a celebrity, why don't you buy a bigger place? It would be more convenient for your live streams if we had some extra room. Dorothy wasn't worried about upsetting Lily when she said, And when that piece of trash Kevin gets out of prison, he won't be able to find us. Lily was making at least $100,000 a day on the Williams payroll, plus whatever her fans sent her. She could easily afford a new place. When she thought about Kevin, Lily's eyes started to well up with tears. Do you have a particular place in mind? She asked her mother. I heard that the Salix Leaf Hotel complex that Rachel is managing has just finished some new condos, Dorothy said with a smile. I saw some ads for them yesterday, and they're really beautiful. Lily had also heard about the condos that were being built next to the Salix Leaf Hotel, and she liked the idea. It was probably the best location in Chicago, and the buildings were gorgeous. Some people even thought they were nicer than the condos in Corwin Tower. But they were still very expensive and cost more than double what you would pay in other parts of the city. It's nice, but isn't it a little pricey? Lily asked hesitantly. Well, let's find out, Dorothy said as she called Rachel. As soon as the call connected, Dorothy got right to the point. Hi, Rachel. We're wondering if there are any more condos left at your property. Yes, we still have a few. If you're interested, come down and take a look. I'll show them to you myself. It will give me a chance to stretch my legs, Rachel replied with a smile. Okay, we'll be down there in a little while. Then Dorothy hung up the phone and let Lily know that it was all set before going to the other room to change. Less than an hour later, they both arrived at the sales office and saw Rachel waiting for them by the door. You're getting prettier every time I see you, Rachel, Dorothy said with a smile. Oh, please don't flatter me. Now let me show you our condos, Rachel said as she took Lily by the arm. Wait a second. How can I be seen with the most desirable single woman in Chicago? Lily asked with a mischievous grin. What's Lily talking about? Rachel said to Dorothy as she reached out and playfully pinched Lily's arm. She's just teasing you, Dorothy laughed. Rachel was now very famous all across Chicago, and they were constantly hounding her for TV and fashion magazine interviews. A few minutes later, when they got to the condominium area of the property, Lily and Dorothy were amazed. There was a large artificial lake by the entrance to the magnificent building, along with tennis courts and a high-end supermarket. The place was packed with people who were interested in buying one of the condos. Rachel told them that each place had its own private swimming pool, but there was also a health club if you were interested. Our goal was to make this neighborhood self-sufficient. Everything you need is right here on the property, Rachel said in a slightly promotional tone. Just as she was about to take Lily and Dorothy to see the rest of the facilities, Alan and Susan got out of the car with the help of the driver, but they were dressed in such ordinary clothing that everyone stopped to watch. They looked like they didn't fit in, not just the car, but the entire complex. A moment later, a few women quickly ran out of the building. Two of them took some bags of groceries out of the trunk, and the other stood beside Kevin's parents. Miss Wilson had arranged for all this while Kevin was recovering from his injuries. She got in touch with Rachel and requested that she reserve the best condo in the place for Alan and Susan so they could move in after they were discharged from the hospital. I thought we'd see someone with class, but it's just that parents, Dorothy said with a mocking smile as she walked toward them. Mom, what are you doing? You're embarrassing me, Lily cried out as she tried to stop her mother. Rachel didn't understand what was going on, and she watched the scene awkwardly. She was thinking to herself, aren't these Kevin's parents? They're related to Dorothy, so why is she acting like they're bitter enemies? Alan barely looked at Dorothy, and Susan ignored her completely as they walked into the building with the help of the two women. What are you doing? Don't you know how expensive this place is? You'll just get it dirty, Dorothy reprimanded them harshly. What did you say? Alan replied in an unfriendly tone of voice. You know what I'm talking about. Your useless son is still in jail, and you won't be able to live here much longer, Dorothy sneered. Leave me alone. My son is innocent, Alan angrily retorted. Alan and Susan hadn't talked to Kevin about it yet, but they knew their son wouldn't do such a horrible thing. There was something fishy about the whole matter. My daughter was foolish to marry someone as worthless as that trash son of yours, Dorothy complained. Susan saw that her husband was getting angry and said softly, Alan, let's go inside. We can't just get along with someone like this. She didn't understand how someone who looked so elegant can always say such rotten things. I'm coming, Alan replied as he turned around and walked into the building and headed toward their elevator. He was too tired to deal with Dorothy. You should have stayed on your dirty old farm, Dorothy said with a sneer. Do you really let people like them live here? Dorothy asked Rachel with a perplexed look on her face. Then Dorothy added, I want the condo they're staying in. Get someone to chase Kevin's parents out so we can move in. I'm very sorry, Dorothy. They bought their condo 10 days ago. Why don't you take a look at a different one? Rachel tried to explain. This was a very embarrassing situation. They actually live here? How is that even possible? Dorothy asked in disbelief. Lily also looked at Rachel in shock. She didn't know Alan and Susan well, but she more or less knew their financial situation. How much did they pay? We'll offer more, Dorothy offered impatiently. I'm sorry, Dorothy, but I can't do that, Rachel said very apologetically. You're the vice president of this place. What do you mean you can't do that? Dorothy asked indignantly. There's nothing I can do about it. Before the building was complete, I was told to reserve the best unit for Mr. and Mrs. Williams, Rachel said as she smiled awkwardly. Then she offered, there are a lot of other units still available with beautiful views and amenities. Why don't we go look at them? Who told you to do that? Lily suddenly asked. But Lily had already thought of one possibility. It obviously had something to do with Kevin, but she shuddered to think of who might have helped them. Since when did Kevin know someone who was so powerful? Lily, please don't make things so difficult for me, Rachel begged her. She was afraid of revealing Kevin's true identity. Lily lightly nodded her head as she thought about Rachel's difficult position, but she still wondered, could it be Dalton Steele? But Lily was actually interested in living in the best condo in the building. The location was great and it was close to transportation. Plus, it would only increase in value. It was nearly 6 o'clock, and almost all of Chicago's upper crust would soon be arriving at the banquet at the Salix Leaf Hotel. It was a highly anticipated event to kick off the Foreign Film Festival. There was a lot of commotion because Williams Media had announced that their CEO would be there in person, and everyone knew that the CEO, whoever they were, had a close relationship with Mitchell Cook and other prominent Chicagoans. Nobody wanted to miss this event. Plus, they were aware of everything that Williams Media had done to help straighten out the recent economic crisis. They had even gotten the KWTD Corporation to help the city, and they had spent a fortune to protect Chicago's economy. So the reputation of Williams Media had grown exponentially, but what everyone really wanted was to kiss up to the company's CEO. When Brittany and Charity got out of the car, the crowd roared. The place was jumping, and paparazzi were swarming Williams Media's latest stars. The crowd was clamoring for autographs and shouting how much they loved them both. While everyone was focused on Brittany and Charity, a well-dressed man in sunglasses stepped out of the limo and accompanied the two women as they walked toward the hotel's entrance. At first, a lot of people thought that he was their bodyguard. Then they started to realize that he was probably Williams Media's CEO. Under the watchful eyes of Brittany and Charity's fans, Kevin guided them through the throng, stopping now and then to exchange a few words with some of the onlookers. A lot of very prominent people were doing their best to make a good impression on him, pushing through the crowd to offer him projects and invite him to dine with them. Kevin smiled politely and chatted with a few of them as he and his companions continued to make their way to the banquet. Just then, the three of them heard someone call to Brittany, "Long time no see, my dear. I miss you so much." He was walking over toward Brittany. Kevin frowned slightly when he saw the man. "I didn't expect to meet you here, my sweet. Would you like to have a long talk with me tonight?" The man smiled lewdly. "Sorry, I'm not free this evening," Brittany replied coldly. "Are you so busy these days that you don't have time for me? You know advertising is very important in this business," the man said conceitedly. The rude man thought that Kevin was just Brittany's bodyguard, so he didn't pay any attention to him. "So you're the one who did it?" Brittany said as her smile turned into a scowl. "So what if I did?" Vito Booker said arrogantly. "I told you last time we met that no woman I like can reject me if they want to keep working in the entertainment industry." Then Vito continued with a lascivious look in his eyes. "But you know I can always change my mind if you're willing to change yours." This infuriated Brittany. Kevin had finally had enough of this and said, "Someone should do something about this. Chicago has leash laws, you know." He didn't really care what the guy might say to him.
Hi, Kevin here. If you're wondering what happens next, then stay tuned on the Pocket FM Universe channel for more episodes.